Have you ever had a moment where everything changed, but you didn't see it coming? There I was, walking into that locker room, thinking this was just another conversation about my son. But the door clicked shut behind me, and I knew something was different. What started as a simple message from Coach Kessler turned into something neither of us had expected. It wasn't about football. It was something more, something I hadn't allowed myself to face. Two men standing on the edge, uncertain yet drawn to each other. What happens when you finally confront what's been quietly waiting? Let me tell you what happened next. That day started like any other. I was just another dad on the sidelines, trying to keep my distance, watching my son Eli, a backup wide receiver, trying to find his place on the team. High school football can be tough. The pressure, the competition, it's all part of it. But Eli, he had heart, and that mattered. To Coach Kessler at least, or so I'd heard. I always respected him. A quiet legend in town. He was tough, fair, and one of those guys who still looked like he could suit up and play, even though he was probably a lot older than he let on. Thick arms, gray at the temples, and the kind of presence that commanded respect. But today was different. It wasn't the usual post-practice chat about stamina or endurance. No, this was something else. As I sat in my truck, looking at the rows of chain-link fences and the low-lit hallways of the athletic wing, something gnawed at me. I had no idea what was coming, but I had a feeling that something was about to change. Then my phone buzzed. I picked it up, not thinking much of it at first, but when I saw the message, something about it felt off. Mr. Blake, can you stop by the locker room office after pickup? I need to talk about Eli. It wasn't a big deal on the surface, right? Just a simple request. But the tone of it had a different weight. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But Coach Kessler was never one for unnecessary words. Everything he said, every action, had a purpose. I shoved my phone back into the seat and tried to shake off the feeling that was creeping up on me. I had no reason to worry. It wasn't about me. It was about Eli, right? Maybe there was something he needed to tell me about how my son was doing, some area of improvement, maybe something I could help with. But as I walked toward the locker room, my steps grew heavier. The hallways were quiet, too quiet. No players left, just the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above and the distant echo of showers being cleaned. It was like I was walking into a different world, one that didn't just belong to me. The sense of isolation was almost physical. Like the building itself was waiting for something to happen. I knocked once on the frosted glass of Coach Kessler's office, and before my hand could even fall, he opened the door. A quick nod and a simple, "Mr. Blake," and I was inside. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I felt it. The lock turning. That small, deliberate action, the sound of it felt like a finality. For a second, I froze. Everything I'd imagined this conversation to be, talking about Eli, about football, faded away. This wasn't about my son anymore, and deep down I knew it. I couldn't quite place it, but I knew. There was something else here, something I wasn't ready for. Coach Kessler stepped aside, motioning for me to sit, but he didn't immediately speak. His eyes were intense, but not in the way you'd expect from a coach giving a pep talk. No, this was different. It was like he was studying me, trying to figure something out. I felt exposed under that gaze, yet there was something comforting about it, too. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. The air between us was thick with something I couldn't name, and as the silence stretched on, I found myself shifting in my seat, uneasy.
But Coach Kessler, he stayed steady, calm. Finally, he spoke.
"He's doing fine," he said about Eli. "He's working hard. You raised a good kid." The compliment, though appreciated, didn't ease the tightness in my chest. I nodded, but it didn't feel like enough. Not yet. Coach Kessler crossed the room slowly, his every step deliberate, like he was trying to measure the space between us in more ways than one. He leaned against the edge of his desk, arms folded across his chest, looking at me in a way I wasn't used to. It wasn't the coach looking at his player's dad. It was something else. "It's about you," he said, his voice quiet. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't going to be a regular conversation. It wasn't about my son anymore. It was about something I hadn't even allowed myself to think about. Something unspoken, hanging in the air between us. His eyes never wavered from mine. And in that moment, I realized we weren't just talking about football. We were talking about something far deeper, something neither of us had the courage to name. That moment when the door clicked shut behind me felt heavier than I ever could have imagined. It wasn't just the sound of the lock, though. It was something else, something deeper, something that seemed to shift in the air between us. Coach Kessler wasn't just locking the door to his office. He was locking us both in this space, this moment, in a way that left me feeling exposed, uncertain, yet strangely drawn in. I'd been here before, in rooms filled with tension, in situations where something wasn't quite right. But this was different. I couldn't pinpoint it, but I felt it in my chest. This heaviness, this pull, as though the air itself was waiting for something to happen. It wasn't about football anymore. It wasn't about Eli either. That thought, my original reason for being there, began to slip away, like sand through my fingers, as if something else had quietly taken its place, and I didn't know what to do with it. Coach Kessler didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood there, his presence quiet but powerful, his eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, it felt like time had slowed down. The room, which just moments ago had seemed so ordinary, felt suddenly intimate, almost suffocating in its silence. The space between us grew thick with something unspoken, something neither of us was ready to address, but both of us knew was there. I shifted in my seat, trying to ease the discomfort building in me. The chair beneath me creaked under the weight of my own hesitation. I wasn't sure what to say, what to do, or even if I could move. My body wanted to stay still, but my mind was racing, trying to find a reason, any reason, to justify what was happening. Why was I here? Why was he looking at me like that? And then, the silence broke. Coach Kessler spoke, his voice low, almost as if he were choosing his words carefully, testing the waters. He's doing fine. Your son, he's working hard. You've raised a good kid. The words themselves were comforting, but they didn't bring the relief I'd expected. They didn't ease the tightness in my chest or calm the swirling thoughts in my mind, because I knew there was more. This conversation wasn't about Eli, not really. And the more I sat there, the more I realized that maybe this moment wasn't just about anything that could be easily explained. I could feel the shift in the room, the air between us growing heavier with every passing second. Something was happening, something that neither of us was quite ready to name. Coach Kessler stepped toward me slowly, his movements deliberate, almost as if he was measuring the distance between us, not just physically, but emotionally. He didn't sit down. Instead, he leaned against the edge of his desk, folding his arms across his chest, his eyes never leaving mine. There was something about the way he stood, so grounded, so calm, that made my pulse quicken, even as I tried to force myself to stay composed. He was waiting for me to say something, anything, but I didn't know what to say. And then he spoke again. "It's about you." I froze. The words didn't land right away. For a moment, it was as if the world outside that room disappeared completely. The noise, the hum of fluorescent lights, even the distant echoes of players in the hallway. All of it faded. There was only Coach Kessler, standing before me, his words hanging in the air like a confession, something raw and unspoken. It hit me like a wave, sudden and powerful. This wasn't just about Eli. This wasn't a coaching moment or a father-to-coach conversation. This was about me, about us. The realization of it was jarring. The door wasn't the only thing that had been locked. The conversation had been locked too. Locked behind that door was something we'd both been avoiding, something I had been avoiding. And now, in this small, dimly lit office, there was no hiding from it. The weight of his words, "It's about you," settled into the room, wrapping itself around me, and I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for a long time. Something I'd buried beneath layers of self-denial. A quiet realization I'd kept locked away. Just like this door, just like this room. Coach Kessler's eyes didn't waver. They were steady, sure, but there was something else in them too. A depth, a kind of knowing. It was as if he could see through the walls I had built, see through the distance I'd kept. And I wasn't sure if that scared me, or if it made me feel understood. I wanted to say something. To push back, to tell him it wasn't about me, but the words stuck. My throat tightened, my mind went blank. All I could do was sit there, locked in that room, locked in that moment, unsure of where it was headed, but knowing there was no turning back. And then it happened. The space between us, which had been charged with that heavy silence, shifted again. It wasn't just physical distance now. It was emotional. It was the kind of shift that happens when two people finally stop pretending, when they stop running from what's right in front of them. And I felt it. The gravity of it. The pull. A pull I didn't know how to resist. The stillness between us felt thick, almost tangible. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that what had been locked away wasn't just in the room, it was in me. I was the one who had kept the door shut, and now somehow I was being asked to open it, to face whatever was waiting behind it. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. This wasn't about football, it wasn't about being a dad or a coach. This was about something raw, something real, and it was happening whether I was ready or not. And still, he stood there, waiting. His presence, unwavering, calm, patient. He wasn't rushing me. He wasn't pushing, but he was there, right in front of me. And for the first time, I felt like I was really seeing him, not just as a coach, not just as the man who guided Eli on the field, but as something more. Something I wasn't prepared to acknowledge, something I couldn't ignore anymore. The tension in the room was so thick it felt almost suffocating. We were still standing there, neither of us moving. It wasn't the kind of silence you'd expect from two men who didn't know each other. It was different. The kind of silence that makes your heart beat faster, that sends your thoughts racing, trying to find something to say, anything to break the stillness. But in that moment, I didn't want to speak. I didn't know what to say. I just wanted to understand what was happening between us. Coach Kessler had already broken the ice by saying it was about me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something from me. Some sign, some acknowledgement that we were both aware of the shift happening right there in that room. The door was locked, and with it, any chance of running away. There was no escape now. The weight of it was pressing on me, and yet, for reasons I couldn't fully understand, I didn't feel the urge to flee. If anything, I felt like I was being drawn in, pulled into something deeper than I had ever anticipated. I could feel the change in the air, a shift that was subtle but undeniable. His gaze never left me. It was steady, calm, but there was something about it that unsettled me. Something intimate about the way his eyes held mine, like they were searching for something, not just answers, but a connection. It wasn't a look of curiosity, but of understanding, as if he knew something about me that I hadn't even figured out for myself yet. And that thought, that realization, made my heart race. I shifted slightly in my seat, trying to shake the growing unease, but I couldn't escape it. My body was telling me to stay still, to breathe through the tension, but my mind was spinning. This wasn't just a conversation about my son anymore. This wasn't just a coach giving advice to a concerned father. This was something else, something I wasn't ready to face. And then Coach Kessler moved. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't aggressive. It was a slow, deliberate step that made my chest tighten. He didn't approach me immediately. He didn't invade my space, but he didn't pull away either. He just stayed there. Still, in the quiet, watching me, waiting for me to make the first move, as if he knew I was the one who needed to close the gap. I could feel his presence, so close yet so far, and I was torn between wanting to stay frozen, to keep my distance, and the desire to step closer, to see what would happen if I did. His body language was open, but there was something controlled about it. Something that spoke of restraint, of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, but wasn't rushing. He was waiting for me, giving me space to make up my mind, but he was there, present, in a way that made everything feel amplified. The quiet of the room, the warmth of his body, the air around us. It was all so palpable, like everything was charged with something I hadn't even realized I was missing, something I hadn't even known I wanted. For a second, I almost wanted to look away, to find something, anything, to focus on other than him. But I didn't, I couldn't. His eyes held me in place. And then, with a voice so soft, so intimate, he spoke again. "You don't even realize, do you, how much you're carrying around?" It wasn't a question. It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple statement, but it hit me like a wave. Like he was speaking directly to something deep inside me, something I hadn't been willing to admit, even to myself. I had been carrying a lot more than I cared to admit. Maybe I had even convinced myself that it was just the weight of being a father, of trying to support my son through his own struggles. But this was different. He wasn't just talking about my son anymore. He was talking about me. And in that moment, something in me cracked. Something I had been holding on to for so long, something I didn't even know was there, started to come to the surface. The walls I had so carefully built around myself, the ones I had convinced myself were necessary, began to crumble. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel it. The loneliness, the yearning, the tension I had been holding in for far too long. And in that moment, it was like Coach Kessler had given me permission to let go of all of it. To acknowledge that maybe I didn't have to carry everything alone. Maybe it was okay to be seen. Maybe it was okay to let someone in. He took another step, and this time I didn't back away. I couldn't. His presence was undeniable, pulling me in like gravity. And as he closed the distance between us, I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time, something warm, something real. His hand reached out, just a little, hovering over my chest. He didn't touch me immediately. It was like he was waiting for me to give him permission, waiting for me to acknowledge the unspoken bond that had been building between us. And I did. In that moment, I silently gave him permission. Permission to cross that line. Permission to break through the walls I had so carefully built. His hand landed gently on my chest. It wasn't a touch that demanded anything. It wasn't possessive. It was tender. And in that tenderness, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I felt seen. I felt understood. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I had always believed myself to be. The weight of his hand, the warmth of his skin sent a shiver through me. It was simple, but it wasn't. It was a quiet invitation, an invitation to acknowledge the space between us and fill it with something real, something genuine. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't pull back. I let him in. In that moment, everything changed. The room, the silence, the tension, it all shifted. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. And in that shift, I felt a kind of relief I hadn't known I needed. Maybe I hadn't even known it was possible. Coach Kessler didn't move any closer, but he didn't pull away either. His hand remained steady, his fingers gently pressing against my chest, like he was trying to ground both of us in this moment, and I felt it. I felt grounded. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just standing on the edge. I wasn't just waiting for something to happen. I was part of it. We were part of it. And that, right there, was enough to make everything else fade away. The uncertainty, the fear, the hesitation, all of it melted in that simple, quiet touch. I didn't know where this was headed, but in that moment it didn't matter. Because for the first time I didn't feel the need to control it. I just let it happen. And as the room grew warmer, the silence between us grew heavier. Not with awkwardness, but with something deeper. Something real. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. And as I stood there, my chest rising and falling with every breath, I realized that this wasn't just a turning point. It was a beginning. The silence between us grew heavier, more charged, and for a moment, I wondered if the world outside that room still existed. There was no noise, no distractions, just the steady rhythm of our breathing, each breath filling the space with an intensity I wasn't used to. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath too, waiting for something, waiting for one of us to move, to break the tension, but neither of us did. Neither of us dared to. I could feel Coach Kessler's presence all around me. It wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional. His hand, still resting gently over my chest, had become more than just a simple gesture. It was a connection that went deeper than any conversation we had ever had, deeper than any unspoken word we could share. In that moment, I understood it wasn't about words at all. It was about what was happening between us, in the quiet, in the space that neither of us had planned for but both of us were beginning to feel. My heart raced in a way that felt so unfamiliar, so raw. The longer we stood there, the more I could feel the distance between us closing, and yet I was frozen. Frozen not because I was scared, but because I was afraid of what would happen if I moved, if I let myself give in to the pull between us. For the first time, I wasn't just standing on the outside, looking in. For the first time, I was standing in the middle of something real, something that didn't need to be explained, didn't need to be justified. And yet, despite how natural it felt, I couldn't ignore the confusion that tangled in my chest. Was this real? Was it okay to feel this way? Was I supposed to feel this drawn to him, this connected? I didn't speak. I couldn't. The words didn't seem right. And somehow I felt that Coach Kessler didn't need me to say anything. He didn't need me to say what we both knew was there. He was patient, steady. His hand still rested on my chest, his touch so gentle, so grounding. It was as though he was reassuring me without words, without the need for any explanation. And then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned in. Slowly. His face coming closer to mine, inch by inch, like he was giving me time to pull away, to stop him if I wanted to. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body felt like it was pulling me forward, as if some magnetic force was drawing us together. The tension in the room, that silent charge, crackled with possibility. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't desperate. It was more like a question, an invitation. And when his eyes met mine, I could see the same uncertainty, the same vulnerability that I was feeling reflected in his gaze. For a brief moment, we both hesitated. The room seemed to hold its breath. The weight of the moment hung in the air, heavy but not oppressive. There was no rush, no urgency, just the quiet understanding that something real, something powerful was about to happen. And then, without a single word, without a second thought, he closed the final distance between us. His lips touched mine, soft at first, gentle, as though testing the waters. I felt the warmth of his skin, the familiar yet foreign feeling of his presence so close to me. My breath caught, the world outside this room slipping away as I focused only on the feeling of his mouth on mine. It wasn't a kiss of passion, not at first. It was a kiss of understanding, of recognition. Like we both knew we were stepping into something bigger than either of us had anticipated, and we were allowing it to happen. We weren't rushing into it. We were letting it unfold, like a delicate flower blooming in slow motion. And then, the kiss deepened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but then it grew, soft and tender, building in a way that felt so natural, so right. My body responded before my mind could process it. My hand moved instinctively to his shoulder, the rough fabric of his shirt beneath my fingertips grounding me in this moment. His hand, still over my chest, shifted slightly, pulling me closer, the heat of his touch seeping through my shirt, making my pulse quicken even more. It was a kiss that wasn't about desire, though it was full of it. It wasn't about need, though I felt it in every fiber of my being. It was a kiss that spoke to something deeper, something unspoken that had been quietly growing between us. It was a kiss of discovery, of acceptance, of vulnerability. The kiss wasn't a single act. It was the beginning of something we were both allowing ourselves to feel, allowing ourselves to experience, without shame, without fear. And in that moment, I realized I had been holding my breath. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. I had been holding on to something for so long, something I didn't even know I was afraid to let go of. But now, in the warmth of that kiss, I felt it all dissolve, the fear, the uncertainty, the walls I had built around myself. The kiss continued, slow and steady, a rhythm that felt like it had always been there, like it was meant to happen, like it had been waiting for us to acknowledge it. The softness of his lips on mine was like a promise that we didn't have to rush, a promise that this moment was real, and that we could take the time we needed to explore it fully. It wasn't about a quick, fiery release. It was about allowing ourselves the space to feel everything, to let go of everything we had been carrying up until this moment. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it. I let myself feel what it was like to be truly seen, to be understood, to be wanted. And in the quiet of that kiss, I knew that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. This wasn't just about what we were feeling in the here and now. This was about something deeper, something that would stay with me long after we pulled away from each other. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't because the moment had ended. It was because we both needed to breathe. But the connection was still there. It was still alive, still pulsing between us. Neither of us had to say a word, because we both knew it. The kiss wasn't just the beginning of something physical. It was the beginning of something far more profound. And I knew that whatever came next, we weren't going to pretend it wasn't real. We weren't going to pretend that it didn't mean something. Because it did. It always had. The kiss we shared wasn't just a moment. It wasn't just a fleeting spark of passion, or a rush of something that would fade once the world came crashing back in. No, it was something deeper. Something that left me breathless, not because of the physical connection, but because it made me realize how much I had been holding back from myself. As I stood there, my mind still racing from the heat of it, my body still warm with the echo of his touch, something shifted inside me. I had been running from so many things, fears, doubts, the truth of what I felt. But now, in the quiet aftermath of that kiss, I felt a kind of clarity I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about what had just happened between us. It was about me. It was about letting myself feel things I had buried for far too long. In that kiss, I had felt seen, not just by him, but by myself. For so long, I had hidden behind walls I built out of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of vulnerability, fear of letting anyone too close. And yet, in that moment, everything shifted. I wasn't just allowing him to see me. I was allowing myself to see me. And it felt like the first breath I'd taken in a long time. It wasn't just about the physical act. It wasn't just about the chemistry between us. What made it meaningful, what made it real, was the way we connected. Emotionally, mentally. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It was something that built slowly, quietly, until it reached a point where neither of us could deny it anymore. The connection between us wasn't something that could be explained in words. It was something that was felt deep down in the chest, in the soul. And in that moment, it was more than just a kiss. It was a recognition of something we had both been searching for. I could feel it now, in the air between us, in the way we stood there, not saying anything, just being. The space between us wasn't awkward. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something that felt almost sacred, as if we were both understanding that what had just happened was bigger than either of us had anticipated. It was a shift, not just in the way we saw each other, but in the way we saw ourselves. For so long, I had convinced myself that I was okay alone, that I didn't need anyone, that I could carry all the weight of the world by myself. But standing here with Coach Kessler, I realized how much I had been denying myself, how much I had been holding back from the world, from others, and most importantly, from myself. The connection we shared wasn't just about attraction, though that was there. It wasn't just about a physical spark that ignited between us. It was about recognition. It was about two people, two men, seeing each other for who they truly were, without pretenses, without masks. It was about stepping into the vulnerability of who we were in that moment, and allowing each other to be seen, fully, without judgment. As I stood there, still caught in the quiet of the moment, I realized that I wasn't just looking at Coach Kessler as a coach anymore. He wasn't just the man who had guided Eli on the field, or the figure I had respected from afar. No, now I was seeing him differently. I was seeing him as someone who was willing to step into the same vulnerability that I was, someone who wasn't afraid to acknowledge the connection we had just begun to uncover. The way his eyes met mine now wasn't just with the same intensity, the same quiet understanding. No, there was something more to it. There was a tenderness there, a kind of softness that spoke of a shared recognition. He wasn't just seeing me as the father of his player. He wasn't just seeing me as the man who had been quietly standing on the sidelines, detached, unsure. He was seeing me for who I truly was, as I was beginning to see him for who he was. And I realized, in that moment, that we were both in the same place. Both of us had been carrying burdens. Both of us had been holding back parts of ourselves, afraid of what it would mean to truly open up, to truly connect with someone else. But now, for the first time, I didn't feel the need to hide. I didn't feel the need to hold anything back. Because in this moment, with him, I felt understood. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. What happened between us wasn't just a physical kiss. It was an invitation. An invitation to explore what we had started, to see where it could go. An invitation to let down our walls, to take a chance on something real, something meaningful. And in that invitation, there was a quiet promise. A promise that we didn't have to rush. A promise that we could take the time we needed to explore this connection, without fear, without hesitation. I felt something in that kiss, something I hadn't felt in so long, hope. It wasn't just about him. It was about what this moment represented. It was about finally allowing myself to feel something, to let someone in. It was about finally allowing myself to be vulnerable, to be seen. And that was something I had been missing for a long time. As we stood there, the connection between us still palpable, I realized that this was just the beginning. It wasn't just about the kiss we had shared, it was about what was to come next. What mattered now was not what had happened in that moment, but what we would do with it. How we would move forward from here. How we would explore this new space between us, without fear, without hesitation. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this. Maybe we didn't have to walk this path by ourselves. Maybe we could walk it together. That thought, that feeling, settled deep inside me. And as the quiet stretched on, I realized something else too. I was ready. Ready to see where this would go. Ready to see what this connection could become. As I walked away from that moment, from the intensity of what we had just shared, there was a quiet stillness inside me. It wasn't just the kiss, or the fact that it had been one of the most powerful experiences of my life. No, it was the fact that something had shifted within me. Something I hadn't even realized I was missing. Something that had been buried beneath years of routine, of fears, of being afraid to step into the unknown. And as I drove away from the locker room, my mind started racing, trying to process everything. But even in that rush of thoughts, one thing stood clear. Whatever this connection was between Coach Kessler and me, it wasn't just a fleeting moment. It wasn't just about the chemistry we shared in that room. It was about something real, something that I couldn't ignore, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to. The message from Coach Kessler later that night was simple, but it felt like a weight lifted from my chest. I know it's late, but if you're free tomorrow, we could grab dinner. I'd like to talk more, if you're up for it. There it was. The next step, the invitation, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. It was exactly what I needed to hear. An invitation not just to explore what was happening between us, but to take it seriously, to give it space to grow. But of course, even with that invitation, a part of me felt hesitant. A part of me still carried that old fear. The fear of vulnerability, of opening up, of stepping into something unknown. How would we handle this, really? Would it be awkward? Would it make everything feel too real, too fast? But then, as the night wore on and I thought about it more, I realized that hesitation wasn't coming from the connection I felt with him. It wasn't about what was happening between us. It was about the world outside this, about everything I had been trying to protect myself from. It was about the idea of what other people would think, how I'd be judged for taking this step forward. But in my heart, I knew that this was different. This wasn't about anyone else's judgment. It was about me, about what felt right, about what I needed. And what I needed was to see where this could go. I texted him back. Simple, clear. I'd like that. Tomorrow sounds good. The next day, I found myself preparing for that dinner with a mix of excitement and nervousness, and I realized how much I'd been holding on to over the years. It wasn't just about the kiss. It was about allowing myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to feel something real, something that wasn't about expectations or fear, but about connection, about simply being seen and understood. When I arrived at the place Coach Kessler had chosen, a cozy little spot with soft lighting and a laid-back vibe, my heart was already racing. I stepped inside, scanning the room for him, and there he was. He looked just as calm as ever, but there was something different in his eyes, a kind of warmth that hadn't been there before. It wasn't the usual professional distance. No, this was something new, and it made my chest tighten with anticipation. He stood as I approached, a quiet smile spreading across his face. And right then, I realized how much I had missed that feeling of being seen in that way, of being recognized, not just as someone passing through the world, but as someone worth knowing. We sat down, and immediately, the tension that had lingered from the night before started to ease. We didn't dive into anything too deep. It wasn't a conversation about labels or where this would lead or how we would explain it to anyone. It was a conversation about life, about the things that mattered to us, about the small, everyday things that made us who we were. He told me about his upbringing, about what football had meant to him throughout his life, about the moments that had shaped him into the man he was today. I shared the same. I opened up in ways I hadn't in a long time, talking about my past, my fears, the things that had held me back for years. What struck me most, though, was how easy it was. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, no pressure. It felt natural, like we were just two people, sharing a meal, getting to know each other. There was no rush. There was no pressure to make something happen. We were just being, existing in the same space, allowing the conversation to flow without forcing it. And I realized in that moment that this was exactly what I had been missing. The ability to be with someone, not as a projection of who I thought I should be, but as I really was. No pretenses, no walls. As we talked, I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. Not just at his jokes, but at the way we clicked, at the way our stories seemed to intertwine in this unexpected, beautiful way. It wasn't just about attraction anymore. It was about something deeper, something more lasting. It was about connection. By the end of dinner, the nerves had melted away. What started as a simple meal turned into something more, a quiet affirmation that this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was real. It was happening. As we walked outside, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The night had gone better than I'd imagined. There was no awkwardness, no discomfort. Just the two of us, walking side by side, talking about everything and nothing at all. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was just right. When we reached the parking lot, there was a brief pause. Neither of us said anything at first, but I could feel the unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? What happens next? And I realized, for the first time, that I wasn't afraid of the answer. I wasn't afraid of what came next, because I knew that whatever it was, we would face it together openly, honestly. "Thanks for tonight," he said, looking at me with that same warmth I had seen earlier. "Of course, I'm glad we did this," I replied. He nodded, then added, "I'm looking forward to more." And in that moment, I knew. I knew this wasn't just a casual evening. It wasn't just a dinner between two people. It was the beginning of something real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the excitement of possibility, of new beginnings, of what might be waiting for us as we stepped forward together. As I drove home, I couldn't help but smile. There was no rush, no pressure, just the feeling of something new, something genuine unfolding before me. The night felt different. I'm not talking about the setting, the low hum of the streetlights, the soft breeze that made the trees sway gently, the quiet of the neighborhood around us. No, it was different because of what had happened earlier, that unspoken moment we shared. The dinner, the way we'd connected. Something had shifted between us. It was as if we were both feeling something we couldn't quite put into words, but we knew it was there. Something real. I had been so used to keeping my distance, to holding everything in, to keeping parts of myself locked away because I thought I had to. I thought it was safer, but being with him felt different. It felt like I was finally letting go of something I didn't even realize I was holding on to. We got to his place. Nothing extravagant, but it felt warm, cozy even. It was the kind of place that made you feel at home right away. The kind of space that said, "This is where I am. This is who I am." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just standing on the sidelines of my own life. I was stepping in. Into this moment, into this connection that felt so unexpected, yet so right. As soon as we stepped through the door, there was an ease between us. No awkwardness, no hesitations. Just a quiet understanding that we were both here for the same reason. To be with each other, in the way we had been afraid to let ourselves be before. He led me to the living room, and we sat down. No pressure. No rush. Just two people who were letting things unfold as they would. And I realized, in that instant, how much I had been craving this. This simple, honest connection with someone who saw me. We didn't need to say much at first. The air between us was comfortable, unforced. It wasn't just about the physical attraction anymore. It was about the space we shared, about what we had been able to open up to in each other. There was an undeniable tenderness in the way we were together. No walls, no pretenses. Just two people getting to know each other on a deeper level than I had expected. We talked about everything, nothing and everything at once. The small, mundane details of daily life, the things we had been through, the things we hoped for. But what made it different was the way he listened. Not just hearing me, but really listening. The kind of listening that makes you feel seen, like what you're saying matters. It wasn't just small talk. It was a conversation about who we were, who we'd been, and maybe who we were becoming. His presence was comforting, steady. It was as if he wasn't just offering me his attention, but also his understanding, his openness. And I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't in a long time. I shared things with him, parts of me I had kept buried under layers of fear and uncertainty. And when I looked up, I saw him looking at me, not just with the eyes of someone who had shared a moment, but with the eyes of someone who truly saw me. And it felt like I could breathe again. As the night went on, the natural connection between us continued to grow. We were no longer just two people on a date. We were two people discovering something real, something authentic. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't afraid of what this might mean or what would happen next. I wasn't worried about the what ifs. I was just there, in the moment, letting it unfold naturally. At some point, we moved to the couch, sitting close but not too close, just close enough for it to feel right, for the space between us to feel warm. And then there was that moment. That moment when everything shifted. We didn't need words. It was in the way we looked at each other, in the way we let the silence stretch between us. Not uncomfortable, but filled with possibility. There was no rush, no pressure to move faster than we were ready. It was just two people, letting whatever was happening between them happen at its own pace. And then, slowly, without a word, he reached for my hand. A simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. It was an invitation to step further into this space, into this connection we had started to explore. And when my hand met his, there was a feeling of calm, of trust, of being seen, not just physically, but in the truest sense of the word. The touch wasn't demanding. It wasn't about passion or desire, it was about connection. About the quiet recognition that what we shared wasn't just something that could be easily explained. It was something deeper, something that went beyond the surface. It was about the way our hands fit together, the way our fingers intertwined so naturally, so effortlessly. It was a small gesture, but it was everything. And as we sat there, just holding hands, the world outside felt far away. There was no rush to do anything else, no expectations, just the quiet understanding that we were here, together, in this moment, and that was enough. We didn't need anything else to make this real. The connection, the trust, the vulnerability, everything we needed was right there between us. It wasn't about what came next. It wasn't about where this would go or what would happen after. It was about being present, being here, in this moment, and allowing ourselves the space to explore whatever this was, whatever this connection had the potential to become. As the night grew later, the conversation began to slow, and the space between us grew even more intimate. No words were needed anymore. We were both there, fully present, letting the quiet speak for itself. And I realized, in that moment, that this wasn't about rushing into anything. It wasn't about trying to force something to happen. It was about letting things unfold naturally, at their own pace, and trusting that whatever was meant to happen, would. The quiet comfort of being with him, the steady rhythm of our breaths, the warmth of his hand in mine. It felt like the beginning of something real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of what this might be or how it might turn out. I was just ready. Ready to see where it would go. Ready to let the night unfold and trust that whatever happened next, it was exactly where I was meant to be. As the night came to a close, something inside me felt lighter, something I hadn't even realized I was carrying. We didn't talk about the future or what this connection meant. We didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the pressure to figure everything out. I wasn't worried about what this would mean tomorrow or the next day or even a year from now. The only thing that mattered was that, in that moment, it felt right. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As I walked out of his place, the cool night air hit me, but I didn't feel cold. There was a warmth inside me, a quiet confidence that had been building for the last few hours. It wasn't about the kiss or the connection we had shared. It was about something deeper, a realization that I wasn't alone in this anymore. For so long, I had walked through life thinking I had to do it all on my own. I convinced myself that I could carry all my fears, my doubts, my insecurities, without needing anyone's help. I told myself I didn't need anyone to see me, to truly understand me, because I was afraid of being vulnerable. But tonight, with him, everything changed. I didn't need to hide. I didn't need to keep pretending. With him, I could just be me, and that was a gift I hadn't realized I was missing. It wasn't about finding someone to fix me or to make me feel whole. It was about finding someone who accepted me for who I was, someone who didn't need me to be anything other than myself. I felt hope rising inside me. It wasn't a grand, sweeping kind of hope, but a quiet, steady one. The kind that makes you believe that maybe the future doesn't have to be something to fear. Maybe it could be something to look forward to. Maybe all those fears I had, about being seen, about being loved, about letting someone close, weren't as big as I thought. Maybe they were just the things holding me back from experiencing the kind of connection I had with him tonight. When I pulled up to my place, I sat in the car for a moment, taking in everything that had happened. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel unsure. I felt steady, like for the first time in a long time I could trust that I was on the right path. That the choices I was making, the steps I was taking, were leading me to something real. I didn't have to rush to define it. I didn't have to put a label on it right now. It was enough to know that something had shifted in me, in us, and that was the beginning. There's something beautiful about those moments when you realize you've opened yourself up to someone else, when you realize that you're not walking alone anymore. It's like you've been holding your breath for so long, not realizing it, and then, in a single moment, you're finally able to exhale. You feel lighter, freer, like the weight of all the things you've been carrying has been shared. In the days that followed, I didn't know exactly what would happen next. But that was okay. I didn't need to know. What mattered was that I was no longer afraid to take the next step. No longer afraid of vulnerability. No longer afraid of what might happen if I let someone else in. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was ready to be present, to let things unfold naturally, to see where this connection could take me. And the best part? I wasn't afraid to find out. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to face whatever came next, not just in this relationship, but in my life. I didn't have to have it all figured out. I didn't need to control everything. What I needed was to trust that, with each step, I was moving towards something good, something real, something I deserved. And with that, I let go. Let go of the need to control. Let go of the fear that had held me back for so long. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes, the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the courage to take that first step, to trust that whatever happens, you will be okay. That you will find your way, and that the journey, whatever it may be, will be worth it. As I reflect on everything that's happened, it's hard to ignore how much can change in such a short amount of time. Life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it? You think you've got everything figured out, your routine, your boundaries, your comfort zone, and then, out of nowhere, something shifts. It can be a person, a moment, or even a realization that changes everything. That's what this journey has been for me, an unexpected yet completely necessary shift. And I know, I'm not alone in this. We all have those moments in life when we start holding ourselves back, afraid to take a step into the unknown. We build walls, make excuses, tell ourselves we're fine just the way we are, alone. But the truth is, we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to connect. We're meant to feel seen, to feel understood. And sometimes, it takes stepping out of that comfort zone, letting go of the fear, to realize that what's waiting on the other side can be better than anything you could have ever imagined. This story, this journey, isn't just about a man and another man finding each other. It's about all of us. How we find connection in unexpected places, how we open up to vulnerability, and how, when we finally let go of the fears and doubts we've carried, we start to realize that the life we've been holding back from is waiting for us. The person we've been running from is often the one who we need to meet most, ourselves. I didn't expect to find someone who could help me see that, who could show me that it's okay to let my guard down. And I didn't expect to learn that it's okay to trust, to take things one step at a time, to let the journey unfold without forcing it. But that's what happened. Now, I'm not just looking ahead at the future with uncertainty. I'm looking at it with hope. And that's the key. Hope. Not knowing exactly how things will turn out, but believing they will turn out exactly how they're meant to. And that, my friends, is freedom. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that life isn't about having all the answers. It's about stepping forward, even when you don't know what's ahead. It's about being vulnerable, being real, and allowing yourself to experience all that life has to offer. Connections, growth, love, and everything in between. And that's what I want to leave you with today. Don't be afraid to take that first step, even if you don't know where it'll lead. Don't be afraid to let someone in, to open your heart, to show up authentically. Because you deserve to be seen. You deserve to feel real, raw, and human. If you're feeling inspired, if this story has touched you in any way, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts with me. I want to hear your stories, your experiences, your moments of transformation. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, learning, growing, and stepping forward. So don't just watch this. Be part of this journey. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. Let's keep this conversation going, because we all deserve to be part of something real. Let's make that happen together. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.